Once upon a time, there was a little girl, and her mom died, but it didn't really matter. I mean, of course, it always matters when your mother dies, but she was absolutely the apple of her father's eye. They were living together happily, but as time went on, as it often does, he met another woman. It's always the other woman. It's always the stepmother. And this story is exactly like that. Once that stepmother had won the heart of the father, she systematically began to isolate the father from his daughter. She had a daughter of her own, so she also had an evil stepsister. And things were on the surface really good, but whenever the chance would arise, whenever the stepmother could, she would always do these little acts of tyranny against the daughter, against the hero of our story. Now, the father was a merchant. He had to go away to do some business, and when he had done that, the stepmother knew that she had complete control of the little girl. She treated her own daughter like a princess, but as soon as that father was out of sight, she threw her stepdaughter into the shack next to the house and would not let her out and would not let her eat. And for a few days, that's how things went. The little girl was only allowed out to do chores around the house, to clean things up, to cut firewood. And then she was put back in the shed, and every night she was given just a little bit of bread to eat, not even any protein. Obviously, the little girl's going pretty hungry. She's on the verge of starvation, and she's thrown a piece of bread in. It's almost about to get moldy. And she knows this is the only thing that she's going to get to eat, so she starts to kind of chomp on it, nibble it a little bit, knowing that it's got to last the night, and she looks over and she sees this adorable little mouse looking at her. And the mouse looks as hungry as she does. And she gives the mouse the little crust left of the bread. And the mouse is thankful and can clearly say it because this is a fairy tale. And he says, "No one ever treats me with kindness. I will help you through this ordeal. I know the things that are going on. I know what your stepmother is planning, and I will 100% help you through this." And the mouse kind of was prophetic because the next morning, when the stepmother opened the cottage, she had this evil look in her eye. And she said, "I need you to go to my sister's house and get some thread and a needle." The little girl was baffled by this. She said, "There's clearly thread and needle in the house. Why do I have to go all the way to your sister's house to get it?" And the woman said, "I'm telling you, you need to do it. We're running out. She's going to provide it for you. Leave right now and start heading for my aunt's house. She's right down that path." And the little girl, kind of tears already beginning in her eye, starts to walk down the path. And the mouse has hopped into her pocket. And the mouse is whispering to her. And he says, "You don't want to go down that path. Her sister, auntie, is actually really a Baba Yaga, the Baba Yaga. And she's got bad things planned for you if you end up at that cabin." But really, the little girl has nowhere else to go. So she starts to walk down the path. She's left her house and her little shed behind. And as she's walking, the mouse is continuing to whisper in her ear. "Pick up the things that I tell you to pick up," it says. "I will look after you. You've been more than kind to me when no one else has been kind." And so the mouse continues to whisper little things in her ear, keeping her company. And they stumble upon a bandana. And in that bandana is some bread and some meat. And the little girl's starving, and the mouse is like, "No, no, 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 no. Don't touch it. Wrap it up, bring it with us. We're going to need this." And she said, "Okay." And so she brings the bandana along a little bit. And then all of a sudden she finds a bottle of oil for cooking. And she thinks, "Oh, I could get out a pan. I could put the meat in it." And the mouse says, "No, no, 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 no. Don't do it. Whatever you do, don't. We're going to need it for the Baba Yaga." So the little girl wraps it in the bandana and she keeps on walking. They walk a little bit further, and then randomly, tied around a tree, they see some blue ribbon. And she's like, this would look absolutely beautiful in my hair. No, 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 says the mouse. Put it in the bandana. Trust me, I got you back. She puts it in the bandana. She keeps on walking, and eventually she gets to the Baba Yaga's house. And the first thing she realizes is that her cabin is on chicken legs, and there's no door. So she's looking all around. She can't find a way in. She starts saying, Auntie, 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 please, please let me in. And all of a sudden, the chicken legs kind of get smaller. The house turns like this. There's a doorway. There's a stairway, and she goes up, and she sees her aunt for the first time. And she's actually horrified by what she's looking at. Big head, huge nose, teeth sharp. And the woman, the Baba Yaga, says, you need to go and do some, she's like, I'm here for some thread and a needle. She's like, that's fine, but you need to do some yard work first. So go out into my yard. And she goes out into the Baba's yard, and the first thing she stumbles upon is this absolutely horrendous dog that's been on the backside, protecting the backside of the cabin, and the dog is barking furiously at it. And she looks down, she looks at the mouse, and the mouse nods, and she tosses the dog some bread. And the dog is absolutely chomping on the bread and kind of growling at her, and then she's looking for some firewood, and there's a birch tree. The birch tree is swinging wildly, almost like it's swinging at her. And she thinks, this would be absolutely beautiful. Like, the leaves are all gone, all of these, scraggly branches. And so she ties the blue ribbon around the branches of the tree, and immediately the swinging stops. But there's no wood. She can't find any. She's got to go off the property a little bit. So she crosses the creaking gate. And as she crosses the gate, it's totally creaky. And she's like, I know what will help this. And she takes out the oil, and she spreads the oil on the joints. And perfectly fine. So she finally finds the wood. She goes back to the cabin. She puts the wood on the fire. And there's the Baba Yaga sitting on a chair stroking a black cat. And the black cat's giving her these evil eyes. And she says, now, you must do all of the housework in the house. I am going to take a shower. And so she leaves to go take a shower. And the little girl's kind of wandering around the cabin. And she doesn't really know what to do, what to clean. She can't really find anything. And so she looks at the cat, and the cat looks like it's about to scratch her eyes out. And she remembers she has the meat, and she gives the meat to the cat, and the cat kind of gives this stunned look, as cats often do, and starts to eat the meat. And Auntie Baba Yaga comes back down, and she looks, and mysteriously all of the housework has been done. While she's been engaging the cat, the mouse has done all of the housework. And she's like, this is crazy. How could you have done this so quickly? That doesn't make any sense. And she's like, I have some things to do around my house. I've got to go work on a few of my spells. I need you to, start doing some of the knitting that needs done. Some of the fixing up of clothes. So here's the needle and the thread, but you can't have it until you do all the work. And so she starts to work, and she's needling all the thread. And the cat's now giving her this kind of sad look, like the cat knows what's coming. And the mouse says, we got to get out of here. She's actually getting a pot ready. She's going to be cooking you in it. We need to get out of here as fast as we can. She's like, but I'm trapped here. She has set up all this stuff to stop me, and I can't get out. And she's looking at the cat, and the cat's guarding the door. And so she takes 2 steps towards the door, and the cat actually looks up, takes out its paw, and opens up the door for her. And she's like, why are you letting me leave? She said, in all the years that I've been with Auntie Baba Yaga, she's never shown me any kindness. You have. You are free to go. But before you go, make sure you get a towel and a comb. The mouse will tell you what to do. So she grabs those things, she puts them in her now empty bandana, and she starts to go out the door. And she's trying to be quiet. She's trying not to raise any suspicion, but she knows she's got to get by the dog. And as she starts to go by the dog looks at her and, don't worry, girl, I got you. Doesn't say a word, and she's able to go, and she's able to sneak by the fence, which now isn't making a noise. And she's able to go right by the tree, which is not trying to attack her at all. She starts to run away. Now the Baba Yaga finish, right? She's got this great pot. She's got all of her vegetables. She's looking to for the girl. She's going to have herself an amazing dinner. And she can't find her anywhere. And she looks at the cat. She's like, why didn't you scratch out her eyes? Because she showed me kindness. And she bursts out the door and she notices the dog is just kind of sitting there looking at her, kind of doing a dog little laugh. Why didn't you stop her? You never showed me an ounce of kindness. She runs through the gate, noticing that it doesn't even squeak. She looks at the tree and she's like, hey, tree, you were my last defense. Why didn't you help out? And she looks and the tree is just sitting there staring at its beautiful blue ribbon, not paying attention to anything else in the world. And that's when the Baba Yaga follows the trail. She hops on her little pistol and mortar, right? Takes off after her. And she's catching. And the mouse says, throw out the cloth. And so she throws out the towel. And as soon as the towel lands, it starts to expand and get wet and expand and get wet and expand and get wet. And before she knows it, there's a huge river in between her and the Baba Yaga. Now she's making time. She's allowed to get away. Only the Baba Yaga has her own towel, and she stops sopping it up until it becomes less and less and less. And then all the water's in the towel. She throws the towel, and now she's back on the hunt. Throw the comb, says the mouse. And the mouse is encouraging her, so she throws out the comb. The comb lands and becomes a huge forest, a new forest that the Baba Yaga cannot find her way through. The crazy thing is, though, by the time she's gotten back to the cabin, her father has returned. She tells her father the whole story. And he immediately kicks the woman out. And the little girl and her father and the mouse live happily ever after. I'm Christopher Balzano, and welcome to Tripping on Legends. Episode 141, The Unusual Suspects. That story that I just told you, that is going to be the centerpiece, kind of our guiding light for this kind of summer project that I've got going on. We've had plenty of summer trips. We had, 2017, we went to Indiana. 2018, Tripping on Legends was able to get to the Ocala area. We went to Stetson. We went to Astor. Now, we are kind of returning to that same area here in 2026. 9 years later, to kind of continue this saga of what is going on in the Ocala National Forest. Now, if you listen to episode 140, I basically put forth this theory that the Ocala National Forest is some kind of liminal space, and that explains so much when it comes to things like the Ocala slip, when it comes to missing persons, when it comes to the things that work on supernatural paranormal energy finding its way, cults finding their way, unusual cryptids, and plenty of ghost stories becoming par from the course here in the Ocala. The people of Ocala looking at each other and saying, well, that's just what happens when you live here. That kind of resolve or resolution that they have, that this is just the way that things are in this area. And the other kind of idea that I put forward with that was this whole idea that liminal space is being controlled or manipulated, attracted to, run by the Baba Yaga. And since I did that video, I've had a lot of people kind of come forward with different ideas and different theories, shooting it down, believing in it. This one idea that each of the cryptids, specifically cryptids that are targeted at men, are really kind of different variations of the 12 Angry Sisters or the 12 Angry Women. And if you don't know that story, you got to listen to episode 140. But they're different variations of the Baba Yaga, or kind of the elements that created the Baba Yaga. So I had this idea that what I was going to do is I was going to take some of the rituals and some of the elements that are in the Baba Yaga story and I'm going to apply them. I don't have a co-host tonight, so this is going to be my co-host. I'm going to apply them to the story or to classic locations in and around the Ocala National Forest that I think for some reason have some kind of special connection to this story. And if you disagree with my decisions, if you think that there are other locations, you're more than welcome to either leave a comment on on one of our social medias. Facebook is facebook.com/trippingonlegends, spooky tripping on Instagram. Of course, you can just go to www.trippingonlegends.com, or even actually in the podcast apps that you have, you can make comments and they get back to me. If you think I'm crazy with these decisions. So legend tripping itself, and by extension tripping on legends, is based on the idea that communities know that this stuff happens and that they actively travel or go to these locations, do the rituals that are requested, that are kind of tried and true and have been shown to have some kind of activity triggered by it, and then they do it. So to me, it seemed perfectly normal to go to several of these locations that I've been to before and perform some kind of ritual involving the things that are mentioned in the story that I just told you, as well as some other legends throughout. And so I'm like, okay, what am I going to bring in? And I used this story that I told at the top to kind of act as an inspiration. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to look at what those things might mean. And so the very first thing that I'm bringing on the trip with me is needle and thread. So I actually had to buy needle and thread. I used to have needle and thread around the house. I think maybe my daughter has done something with it, but I'm not going to judge her. So I'm just going to say that I went out and bought this. Now, I was looking up what exactly does needle and thread mean, and I went through both folklore and then traditional witchcraft. So if you practice and you know some other meanings behind these things, feel free to comment or to get in touch with me about it. So the first thing is the needle and thread. Now, there are two things that are really important about the needle and thread as they have to do with the story. If you listen to episode 140, you heard me talk about the Baba Yaga and its connection to feminist folklore and this kind of role playing and things like that. And I think that continues with the two things that the young girl is forced to do, right? She's forced to do housework inside the house. Then she's sent out to get needle and thread. And then once she gets to the Baba Yaga's house, she is forced to, once again, do housework and then to use the needle and thread herself until the Baba Yaga is satisfied she's done the work, and that's actually when she makes her escape. So I thought this would be an excellent thing to bring. So in each of these locations, I'm going to set up a little, ritualistic, altar kind of thing and put these things in it. Traditionally in folklore, needle and thread are associated with bad luck, especially with black thread. So I'm really I don't want bad luck. I already have it. If you know me, you know. But I want this idea of, I want to do kind of what would be the biggest thing. So you're going to notice oftentimes throughout this, I am going to refer to the color blue, mainly because blue appears so much in the Russian and Jewish versions of this. So I'm probably going to do an entire kind of cross thing here. I can actually open it up. I've got blue and black thread. So I think it's very interesting. I'm going to be using this. Now, thread is, this is kind of interesting. It said, you never lend a friend or a relative a needle, because if you do, you're likely to, their words, not mine, prick the friendship. So I'm not even going to talk about, friends with pricking benefits or anything like that, but I'm just going to say that, all right, that's kind of interesting. And it also spits into the idea of the story where the woman is literally saying to her, go to your aunt's house and get needle and thread, whereas the folklore of it tells you that that's not something that people would do, especially superstitious people would do, because you don't lend out needle and you don't lend out thread. I don't know what the idea is behind that. I know plenty of people who are involved with sewing, and there seems to be like a sewing community and like a respect and stuff like that they have, where they actually do give away their stuff freely. But I think in the story it might even act as a signal. Of course, the thread also is significant for this idea of that there's a long journey ahead, that she is going to have to travel like near and far to kind of accomplish what she needs to accomplish. Now, the next two things I don't have with me because I don't know where I'm going, and it's not like I'm going to get it right now. I'm going to get it on the road. And the first would be a chunk of meat, which you need for the cat, right? Now, that's an obvious thing. This chunk of meat, the cat is the familiar, literally winning over the familiar of the witch is really important in this story, right? You'll notice that in all of these, she wins because she is showing kindness to people who have never been shown kindness. And so they're kind of grateful for that. And so therefore, they let her escape. I'm thinking about what kind of meat I'm going to bring, and I think I'm definitely going to have to bring some beef jerky, because I am going to, in theory, 5 different locations. So it's not like I'm going to like haul around Burger King or something, right? So I think the best idea to do is to make beef jerky specifically for this trip. Now, I am you know that beef jerky is a foundation of tripping on legends. Like, there's rarely a time we go out legend tripping where there's not jerky. And oftentimes it's a navigator's job during the legend trip to provide the beef jerky and make sure they can break open the seal and get the jerky to me. It's that crucial to what we do. So it seemed like a natural fit. I was thinking about what would be a really good thing to do would be to prepare the meat in some kind of, again, traditional Russian or traditional Jewish way. I just bought this beet horseradish, which is like the greatest thing I've ever had in my life. It was amazing. We had salmon for the first time the other night. I'm thinking some kind of marinade that involves this kind of beet horseradish or beets of some kind, I think would be very appropriate and also taste really good. Although I guess in the store, I mean, I can't eat the beef jerky myself, but I am going to eat some of the beef jerky. I mean, I have to be involved. So that's kind of that. And I wasn't able to find too much about the meaning and folklore of meat, because it was really specific to like different stories, different kinds of meat. It generally had a communal feel to it, but like a giving up and a using of the earth in a positive way. The next thing would be bread. So even given my gluten thing, you have to have bread to give to the dog. Now, that's really interesting, because I would have thought the dog would have wanted meat too, but I guess in this case, the dog wanted bread. I guess you had to do something a little different, right? So I looked up all these different things, and I was able to find the Bordinsky sourdough rye. So this is a traditional and very ritualistic Russian sourdough rye bread, also known as Dudaska. Zakuska bread. It's interesting because its color and how dark it is supposed to be some kind of symbolism in culture of sorrow. So the darker the rye bread is, the more you are reflecting the actual sorrow that you're trying to kind of celebrate. It is really interesting because I found this in several different cultures' folklore. The idea that starter symbolizes family survival. And so traditionally, you're not supposed to just go out and buy bread for something like this. You would actually use your family's starter. So that's the yeast that kind of has the flavor, and you feed the yeast a little bit and you use it to make bread, and then you feed the yeast a little bit, and you can have, it can last generations. And so it's clearly, or it's a very clear symbol of the longevity of your family. The longer you can keep that starter yeast going, the more you can pass it off to generations, the stronger it is. It reminds me, because my family has never been big bakers. We've been big cooks, but never necessarily bread makers. We've always gotten the bread, right? That's more of an Italian thing, I think. But my grandfather they were in, no, I'm trying to think of what it is, Concord for years. And they moved into the house in Cambridge, which is the house that, I was born in. And he had a Rose of Sharon. So this Rose of Sharon plant. And as each person was leaving the house, so first my mother and my father, when they left that house, they brought a piece of the Rose of Sharon. They planted the Rose of Sharon. And then it was kind of growing like that. Then when my sisters came of age, they both took the Rose of Sharon too. So I can understand, and all of them, as far as I know, all of them still have it growing in the different locations where they live. I found a whole bunch of really interesting urban legends and folklore specifically tied to bread. For example, you should never cut bread with a knife, as if you cut the bread because the baker has put their intent and their love into making it, you are cutting off their head. or you are cutting off their livelihood. I don't know what you're supposed to do then, because it seemed that any way that are you eating the baker's head? Are you ripping the baker's head off if you rip the bread? So it didn't really necessarily, I didn't really understand it, but I got the idea, okay, you never should cut a piece of bread. You should always break it off. If your bread does not rise, so if you make bread and it doesn't rise, it means that nearby, especially on the property, there is an undiscovered corpse. And it's your job. You'll never be able to make bread again unless you go out and you find the body and you find the soul that needs you. You put salt on the bread, and that's supposed to keep evil spirits away. So there's definitely been a connection made between bread and the protecting, which we all know salt is the universal protectorate anyway, in all of this folklore. Putting salt on the bread, it's almost as if the baking of bread brings in kind of evil spirits, or brings by, and a lot of these cultures talk about the devil or demons, but like a dark spirit comes in. You are never supposed to throw bread into a fire. I didn't know that. If you throw bread into a fire, it means that you are inviting the evil spirits to come and talk to you. It's almost like an invocation for them to come and spend time with you. You are offering yourself up to them, which is why it is considered almost like an evil conjuring spell to burn bread. So you're never supposed to burn your bread. So turn down all of your toasters. I don't want any of you to lose your souls. The next item on the list, which I do have, is now in many versions of the story. So this is a little trauma venting here. In the original version of the story, what they said was, instead of oil, you bring a ball of butter. Now, I have heard enough of the versions of the story, or read enough versions of the story, that I feel comfortable not bringing a ball of butter. That enough of them mention oil that I am going to bring oil. Impractical to bring butter, right? 100%, like going out, bringing butter, it's going to, that would just be a mess. But the other reason is, when I was bullied, when I was really picked on by my sister's friends, my middle sister's friends, they used to call me Butterball all the time. Balzano, overweight. They used to call me Butterball. And it permanently scarred me. I don't eat Butterball products. So there's no way I was going to bring a ball of butter out. But what I did find was this, which I just realized is 145 calories, which is a lot. This is Kubanaska sunflower oil. It's refined and deodorized. So this is from Russia, imported from Russia, sunflower oil. So I think this would be perfectly fine for the ritual. If you were following our social media, you saw that I actually I posted about this, and it was we made a stir fry or not a stir fry, but fried rice the other night, and I had to use this, and it worked out really well. So I think this is perfectly fine. The Kubanachka, the best quality guaranteed. So if it's the best quality guaranteed, it's going to be the best trigger item guaranteed as well. What I did realize, so I'm going to make sure that I do this ahead of time. When I was trying to use it for cooking, it's extremely hard to open. So I'm going to make sure that that seal is broken before I ever leave the house. So there is the oil. Now, the oil is both butter and oil. So it's actually, their folklore is crisscrossed anyway. They both are symbols of protection and healing, which is interesting. And of course, the anointing, using oil for anointing, ritualistic ceremonies, as well as protection and, things like that, I think is right on point with the rest of this. Okay, so, of course, I don't think I put it down here, but I've got my bandana. So in each of these, I have these bandanas. It will be the cornerstone of it. And I went with, it said bandana. I was going for kind of like a traditional babushka kind of looking bandana when I did this. And so I will be bringing these, so I have enough that for each of the locations. So I also have my bandana here. The next thing is the ribbon. So I got myself some blue ribbon because, once again, blue is the color that's most often associated in these stories. So I've got my blue ribbon here, definitely tying it across the trees now. I'm supposed to look for both birch and do these rituals of both birch and oak trees. So what I'm really looking for is some place where birch and oak trees are hanging out with each other. Now, I chose this ribbon. I wanted to get Russian ribbon. The problem was, when I did that, all I got was that little Olympic event or former Olympic event with the stick and the ribbon on it. And so I really couldn't find anything, nor did it seem as if it was a traditional, like, Russian product. And so I figured any kind of ribbon is going to be fine. I got this. It's nice, thick ribbon. The crazy thing is, in a hashtag Follow the Signs moment, this actually came late. It was supposed to come the other day. It was supposed to arrive, it was supposed to arrive on Thursday. Friday morning, my daughter specifically asked me for blue ribbon. She's like, do we have any blue ribbon anywhere? Didn't have it. It was crazy. Now, how many times in my life have I ever needed blue ribbon or called upon blue ribbon? Never in my life. So to actually have it on order and have it be late when all the other stuff arrived on time, it was once again a sign that I had kind of chosen the right one. I like the idea of these trees feeling pretty. The tree, I want to, of all of the things, the tree is the one force that the little girl gets involved with or interacts with that doesn't regularly say to her, doesn't say in the stories, thank you very much for this beautiful ribbon. It's amazing. I appreciate it. Instead, she's able to escape because of the vanity of the tree. The tree, which has been naked in the story, the tree is naked because it's lost all its leaves, is mesmerized. And that's the word that's often used, mesmerized, with its beauty with the ribbon, and therefore lets her go safely. So I thought that was really interesting. Ribbon, especially red ribbon, is said to protect girls from evil spirits. And that's specifically what it said, girls from evil spirits. That was interesting to me because, first of all, it was red, so I was thinking automatically Little Red Riding Hood. But the idea that ribbons are supposed to ward things away, supposed to keep things away, seemed kind of an unusual idea because, from my experience, ribbons are often used in binding spells. And so ribbon is tied as kind of a way to prevent people from doing things, but internally, right? Like, not to protect the thing that you're binding, but rather keep the thing that's being tied, right? Keep it secure and safe and allow it to not do things. And there's a very negative connotation to that. It's not as if they're keeping them safe in a nice tight space. It seems like, no, they're being prevented from doing what they want to do. And so to have that then be also a representation of protection, especially in the woods and especially for young girls, all of which are part of the story, seemed really odd to me. Then there was the other part of the ribbons. And immediately, when I hear ribbons tied around trees in the woods, I hearken back to the Freetown State Forest. And one of the very first things that Alan Alls told me as I started to look into the cult activity in that area, which is ribbons are used to identify in a subtle way who is active, where you're supposed to go. There's like a whole series of codes that are very specific to different cults about ribbons tied around trees. There are marks on the trees that tell you to go left, tell you to go right, things like that. But then there's also this idea that a ribbon tells you other messages, both the color of the ribbon, where it's tied onto the tree, where the knot is facing. You're supposed to use that as navigation that the outsider doesn't understand to get to where the cult is having its meeting, or the group is having its meeting. One of the things I noticed when I went to the Ocala were the same kind of ribbons. Now, keep in mind, woodwork, right? Like, people are out in the woods, trees are tagged for different things. There's a very clear difference between the kinds of ribbon that I see in both of those locations and your average, ordinary, this tree, leave alone, this tree's, set for being cut down. There's kind of an orange-red worker, color to ribbons that you're supposed to just be using for identification of a specific tree. These blend into that. Blue ribbon, black ribbon, white ribbon, they all mean different things, and they're all specific. So if I was in the woods and I belonged to a certain group and I saw the ribbon, I would know enough that I was in someone else's territory, but I wouldn't know the inside scoop to know what exactly the location of it on the tree and where the knot was facing and all that kind of stuff meant. So I just knew I was tramping on someone else's ground. I wouldn't necessarily know who those people were. So I thought it was really interesting and definitely bringing the ribbon in as well. And then the last two things, I totally got towels. Once again, Pride Month, so I've got a whole bunch of different colors, towels and combs, of which I wasn't able to find too much significance to the meaning behind towels and the meaning behind combs. Although I will say I did get, these are high absorbency cloths. So whether I'm chasing after that little girl or trying to get away with the Baba Yaga, I got some really high quality things, which are then going to clearly make it into my kitchen to be used. So then I kind of had my things. I guess the pistol and mortar is the one thing that I haven't gotten yet. And I feel like I should get one that's large enough that I can kind of put some of these items in it. But it's not like I'm going to buy ones for different locations. So I'm going to kind of have one, maybe collect them all in there, ask for the Baba Yaga. If someone's got a ceremony that they think would be perfect for this, let me know. And then I'm going to leave them in the bandana there, which means I'm totally going to freak the crap out of someone else going to that location and thinking that something ritualistic is going on, which I guess it is. Then it became, where am I going to go? And I gave myself a few different options. I put things out there. I also kind of did like a hashtag follow the signs kind of deal where I was waiting for the universe to kind of tell me which one of these locations would be perfect for going out and doing this ritual. I know I'm going to piss some people off because I am talking about the Ocala National Forest, and the locations that I chose, only 2 of them are in the Ocala National Forest proper. I've explained this before. I'm going to explain it again, that there are 3 different, to me, variations of the Ocala. First, there is Ocala, and that is the town of Ocala. Then there is the Ocala National Forest, which is the Ocala National Forest. Now, my book technically is Ghosts of the, or Haunted Ocala National Forest, but that's not what the book is about. Then I have that entire area called the Ocala. So the Ocala is not only the forest, but is also locations all throughout and all in the surrounding areas. Places that the darkness and the weirdness and the things that are specific to that forest seem to drip into and loft into. So when I say it, I mean it in a much larger way or a much wider way than the people who are yelling at me online about, being an outsider and calling it the Ocala. No one calls it the Ocala. It's a very specific definition. The first place that automatically came to my mind, because this is happening kind of coinciding with me going to Sumter County and going to Hernando County and doing some research by day, that I have to go to Hog Island. That's kind of the number one place on the list, because that very specifically is the haunting, or the haunting there is attributed to a swamp witch. And there is almost a synonymous relationship between Baba Yaga and swamp witch. Oftentimes the phrases are swapped in between. In a Baba Yaga story, you might hear her referred to as the swamp witch. So I thought, we got to go to the swamp witch. We got to go to the original, the OG, looking into swamp witches. And of course, like I said, it coincides with me actually working on my book about the swamp witch on Hog Island. And so I was like, that's got to be number one on the list. If you don't know the story, it is episode 48 of Tripping on Legends. I'm giving y'all homework. So you guys have to go in and look at these episodes to kind of agree or disagree with me about these locations. It is the story of a witch who was executed in this area now known as Hog Island, originally known as Pemberton Ferry. And that witch continues to linger at that campsite. She is said to be responsible for a lot of the deaths in the Withlacoochee River. She is also known to torment the campers at the campsite there, where she scratches on the tents and RVs. She puts out fires. She messes with the sanitation. She's heard cackling. She's seen wandering all around the paths. She may or may not be responsible for giving me a whole bunch of ticks both times that I've been there. But she's definitely said to be a force that is creeping that place out. If you follow me, if you know my work at all, you know that it's 100% not a swamp witch. I've done enough research, and that's kind of the premise of the whole book. But I think at least the story exists. And therefore, especially given that there is active evil witches stories in that location, I thought that would be absolutely perfect for this little legend trip. The next place that I was planning on going, and this one I can't do it alone, so someone's gonna have to come with me. Probably the most intimidating place I ever went to in the Ocala National Forest, and that is the bunker. If you have not listened to episode 73, Dark Bunker, Dark Man, I think it's called. Dark Man, Dark Bunker. It's called Road 77, near where Road 77 intersects with County Road 315. You can actually find it in the geocaching app. It is this rectangular bunker, which is probably maybe 8 feet tall, 9 feet tall, and then goes down into the ground from it. Deanna and I went there years ago, and it is, you just know you're in the wrong place. You know you need to get in there, do what you need to do, and get out. And of course, we never went into the actual bunker because the entire thing was flooded out. You got the feeling that you were never coming out. Safety is first. And not to mention the stories about the bunker all kind of take place in and around the bunker, never in the bunker. But it's near Rodnam Dam in Palatka. So it's definitely one of those places where it's like, all right, I'm hitting kind of all the parts of the forest. dark figures have been known to hang out there. I kind of clash with some people I've been talking to lately about what shadow people are. Some people think shadow people have never been humans. I think that part of it's irrelevant. I know that the idea is every shadow person that I've ever encountered or heard stories about, they are watchers. They watch what's going on. Some people say they're feeding off the paranormal energy. The shadow people seem to be the paranormal activity in this place, right? There's no kind of other story that's really well known, and then the shadow people are, I think maybe horrific things happened in that bunker. There are all bunch of, and again, I'm going back to Freetown and bunkers and child murders and things like that. Rumors of child murders. A very similar thing could happen. I tried to identify what these bunkers were used for and what they're created for. I've never been able to get a really good answer on that. I know that people, when they go to travel to the bunker, have suffered time slips. They've suffered Ocala slip, meaning that the bunker is right there. They start to walk towards it, and they just never seem to get there, even though it's right there. I know that people have gone into the area where the bunker is. Their GPS goes out. It's supposed to be right there. Their GPS goes out before they can find it. I think we spent an hour within 20 feet of where it was supposed to be, not being able to find it when we went out. People have seen these shadow people in and around the bunker, like on top, I should say, not inside, but like on top, just kind of hanging out, enjoying their day. Like, how are you today? I'm hanging out at the bunker. It's an extremely intimidating place, but it also seems a place of high energy that would be absolutely perfect for this kind of conjuring, this kind of triggering, to see if we can get the Baba Yaga to associate with us, to talk to us. So, boom, the bunker is in. The next one, and I don't know why this came into my head, but I wanted to hang out with Oki. Not Tomoki, but Oki. And Oki is on Morrison Island in Astor. And I think I just love going back to Astor. It's been a while since I've been there. I'm constantly talking about how it's got to be the most haunted town in Florida. And so I wanted to go back to Morrison Island. That is episode 26, I believe, Kiss My Astor. And then, of course, we have, going back to Astor or something like that. So there's another episode that's linked on that page as well. And I wanted to go to the Jungle Den only because it's the easiest way, because you can't get on Morrison Island. And you shouldn't get on Morrison Island. The lore goes that a Native American named Oki, who was the last of his tribe, traveled down to Astor, set up base, continues to guard it. And the first people who went in, like the actual surveyor records of the people who went in, would hear this absolutely horrific hawk, scream, and then their people would never come out. In the centuries that have followed, people find on the outskirts of Morrison Island, in the swampy areas, where the sand is, a very specific footprint, which is 4 toes on each foot, because Oki, who I never can say his full name, got his toes bitten off by an alligator. And so he walks around with these. Very first time we went to Astor, I saw this. I saw Oki. I saw whoever is said to protect. At about 10:15 at night, he comes out. He walks to the edge of the water. He looks around. He walks around a little bit, makes a little bit of a circle, and then either returns or disappears. If you listen to that episode, you'll hear my full description. That night, after we did a few other things, and it was probably because, it doesn't say whether it's daylight savings time or not. We went out there. It was a little bit late at night, so it was probably closer to 11. And I clearly saw this stiff-backed person floating down from the middle of the island to the edge of the island, hit the water with minimal splash, but definitely a splash. And then for a while, we could just see him in his head floating around in the water before he dissolved away. Place, I think, is for a place that's supposed to be haunted, for a location that's supposed to be haunted every night, and everyone in town seems to know about it, I don't understand why more people haven't written about it. I don't understand why it's not one of the most well-known ghost stories in all of Florida. People keep talking about this one. Dude, there's a friggin' ghost that stands guard like every night. Now, I've heard that the Jungle Den has been closed. So that's going to be a little bit interesting. But the only reason why I was saying the Jungle Den is because you go through the Jungle Den to get to the dock so you can get a clear vision of Morrison Island. So I'm either going to approach it from a different location, or I'm going to just kind of see if I have access to that dock. I would imagine what it means is that the actual hotel is closed, and Yelp has said it. There are different like Reddit threads that have said it as well, and different like local pages that have said it. So I'm going to try to contact my Astor connections, see what's up with it, see what's going on, and then kind of see if I can find a way around that one. And I don't know why I was drawn to that one, because it doesn't necessarily have many of the elements. But for some reason, there's something about the energy that is in Astor that I thought just fits this very well. And I thought if there was an entry point for this liminal space, that entry point could very well be Astor. So if you can think of another Astor location that would act as a good substitute for that, but Morrison Island has always fascinated me. So I thought that was a really good one. The next one, and this is the one that I think I'll catch the most crap for, would be the Ormond Beach Witch, which is episode 129. Ormond Beach has got to be one of my favorite haunted locations. For a while, I was going to be working on a book just about Ormond Beach in that area, kind of talking about the weird history and also the ghost stories and ghostly legends. Just so much there. Not to mention the fact that I am almost out of my Tomoki hot sauce, so I totally need to go to that area to get more hot sauce. But the Ormond Beach Witch is a little bit of a different story, because if you know anything about the stories, and you can find a whole bunch of, you just go to my site and type in Ormond Beach, you'll see all the episodes we've done there. There's this one place called Bulow Creek State Park. And if we are talking about both birch trees and oak trees, that is the oak tree to hit up, because there you have the Fairchild Oak, which we recently went to. Just a few episodes, we revisited it. The place just keeps drawing me back for some reason. But Bulow Creek State Park and the Fairchild Oak are definitely places of high energy. But behind that, there's this road which is called Old Witch Road. It's not actually called Old Witch Road or Witch Road or the Witch's Loop, but that's what the locals call it. It's this... Now, it said 20 miles. I don't think it's 20 miles all the way around it, because Deanna and I went there and we spent probably 2 hours trying to search for what is the location. And we were literally taking people's posts and going word by word, watching videos to see where they had gone in. And we finally found what was known as the Witching Wall, or the Witch's Wall. And it was one of the classic tripping on legends moments, because we were so ridiculously unimpressed. There were stairs. It was maybe kind of clear that there once kind of maybe had been a wall there, but we're talking for generations people had gone to this wall, gone missing, got camped out in the woods, hung out in the woods near it, and like they would hear screaming. They would see these dark figures in it. They would touch the wall. And if you touched the wall, if you didn't say an Our Father after you left, you would die within a week. Like all of this crazy stuff that was associated with this witch's wall. And we went there, and it was like there were a few bricks stuck in the woods, half submerged in the sand or the dirt. Like, this is it. There are some really funny videos about our reaction to it. And yet, again, it's a story that has continued to be told, and even people who have never been out there, and I would imagine most people who tell the story have not actually been out there. They're just retelling stories that they've told. I'm not ready to fully say that Ormond Beach is connected to the weirdness that is in the Ocala. It's kind of far away from it. But what I'm kind of creating is this net in all of these different locations. So obviously that location, there's a story of a witch. It's got the oak tree. I know definitely there are some people in Ormond Beach that I want to reconnect with and kind of, go on this legend trip with. And so I think it would be really interesting to go back up there. I need my hot sauce. So I thought that would be a really good part of the story. So loop that one in. The last one, almost immediately when I started and I was thinking about which locations I would go to. The very first one that came into my head, and so it had to, for me and my Russian doll have got to go to the Stewart homestead. I am not sure why I'm drawn here. Now, the obvious, and if you're looking for information about that, that would be episode 86. So in 1918, Ism and Sally Browning Stewart were murdered in their cabin, shack essentially, in this place in Bushnell. Technically, I believe it was on the grounds of Pemberton Ferry. So again, it's part of my book. He was a horse farmer, and it was discovered that the killer was her nephew, Josh Browning. Everyone says that the location is haunted. I'm first drawn into the story, or the story for this specific adventure, the specific legend trip or series of legend trips, because I think it's a wood cabin, right? It's a wood structure, so it very much feels like a Baba Yaga kind of. There's no chicken legs, but I feel as if it physically maybe fits the description of what we're talking about here. But the other part of it is everyone says that it's haunted, but nobody has any solid stories. It's probably one of the hardest places I've ever had to look into and track the legend down of, because all of the stories about it seem to be not like friend of a friend, like, oh, my uncle told me this happened, or I was talking to these people. Those stories do exist there. But even people who have had firsthand experience, they don't seem to remember what happened to them. And that is baffling to me. I've talked about this. No one else seems to follow up on this. No one else seems to almost like not believe me on this. I don't know. But people have a hard time telling where they are in the Ocala, and they forget things a lot. I see all these things about all these Ocala stories coming out, and I'm like, that's all well and good. I love, generate the stories. But so many of the people, it was almost as if they were struggling to remember trauma that they had buried or had become so common, or they were suffering from some kind of Ocala amnesia, that I would say to them, well, give me the details, and they would struggle. It sometimes took me talking to them 2 or 3 times for them to remember details. So they'd contact me afterwards after it rolled around their head, almost as if it was coming to the surface. But the other thing I would always say to them is, well, where were you? And they didn't know what town they were in, or they didn't know. And that was okay. I mean, that is what, it's when you're in the woods, if you're in the woods proper, and you're actually in the Ocala National Forest, it's hard to maybe know what town you've just crossed into. But I would say to them, well, were you east, west, north, or south? And they would have a hard time telling me that. And I think that that's a very common thing. And I also think it's one of those things you should know where you are. Like, you're in the woods. There's an east side, a west side. There's north, there's south. Sometimes they can say, I was near this. So, for example, in the bunker, they could say, I was near Rodnam Dam. Someone suggested that I follow up, or I try to find the sinkholes that were mentioned in one of the stories, and it was common for spirit animals, and that seemed really like a really good idea, except for the person who told me that story has no idea where they actually were. I followed up with them 2 or 3 times trying to figure out the location of that actual sinkhole, and I don't think the person is a liar. I think, well, are you on? I think maybe they're on the east. They said maybe near the Yearling Trail. Like, those are the kinds of details you get. But people also, that translates also to, everyone says that the Stewarts homestead is haunted. And when you ask them how, they kind of just shake their heads. And they say, and it eventually boils down to, I don't know, I had some weird things happen, or I got a bad feeling about it. Even in the 1970s, Florida Herald, there was a man by the name of Roy Brunson, and he and his wife were interviewed because they had taken over the Stewart homestead. They're actually the ones who tore down the house that did exist. So what you see there is actually not the Stewart's old house, but it's actually the old Brunson house. And they would not stay there. They were from Indiana. They would not stay there because, to quote her, there were just too many haints. And she used the word haint, which I absolutely love. So I've got to make sure that I bring to that location kind of my haint blue towel and my haint blue comb so that, I'll save those for that area. There was nothing specific. She just said everyone knew that it was haunted. And so I think that kind of Ocala amnesia mixed with the fact that it is a house, that it is a wooden house in the woods, mixed with the fact that I feel like I went there, but I never really observed its energy. And I never really followed up with people on what their other experiences had been. I found that it was an amazing kind of final point, the fifth pin of this kind of legend trip in this journey. So that's my itinerary. That's my agenda. That's where I plan to go. I don't know in what order I'm going to go in. I don't know when exactly I'm going to go. I'm hoping between everything that I'm doing with True Tours and the history and haunted history tours here in Fort Myers that I'm doing, things are pretty much tied up. Now I've got a whole bunch of other gigs that are coming up that are really cool. And so I'm going to create an interesting hashtag, and I'm going to take you guys along on this journey with me. I'm going to take her with me. I'm going to see if I can get a good legend tripper for some of these. I know a few good Tripping on Legends Ocala people that I can tap for this. And so if you want to find out where all of this leads, and if you want to follow the journey to these 5 locations with all of these items and my oil, make sure that you follow us at trippingonlegends.com, not to mention facebook.com/trippingonlegends. On TikTok, we are just Tripping on Legends. And then, of course, Spooky Tripping on Instagram. And if you are not following us on wherever you're listening to this, if you're not listening to it live, you're listening to it on a podcast, make sure you hit the follow and subscribe button so you can kind of get all of these episodes. I've got 3 legend trips that are coming up, at least episodes that are coming up, bang, 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 that I'm going to be talking about. So I want to make sure that you guys are catching everything that you possibly can. So make sure that you're following us, make sure that you're looking into what we're doing and getting on this journey with us for these different locations as well as the other ones we've got going on all throughout the state of Florida and hopefully beyond. Hint, hint. And so for Christopher Balzano and his Russian doll, here's hoping that all of your trips are legendary.